the way, this is my wife, Roz, Dr. Rosalind Sweeting. She came with me this morning. She said, you keep talking about these people. So it's just good to be with you guys on the first day of a brand new year. And once again, maximum respect for all the things you guys are doing. This is good. This is a good place to go to church. Now here's what happens, okay? According to St. Matthew, and they call this the slaughter of the innocents, okay? 4th century, it became an actual feast day in the church of the time, both East and West, and it was the first Sunday, first week after Christmas. And everybody goes, what in the heck? Why would you put something like this in the scripture? Well, guess what? It's in the scripture because it's very plausible that it happened. Because the first Herod, because there's a bunch of Herods, okay? There's Herod, then there's Archelaus, who's his son, we'll find out, who's mentioned once in the Bible. And then later on, remember when Jesus is going to be, when they're trying to figure out what to do with him on Maundy, Thursday night before Good Friday, Herod is there too, okay? Herod and who was the Pilate? Herod and Pilate, it says in the Bible, it's really interesting, that they didn't know each other before that day, but after that they became good friends. Because you know what Herod said to Pilate? You take care of him. So here's what happens. Now, after the wise men had left, okay, the big question is how long after the wise men had left? You know, we figured that everything happened there in about 3 days. Okay, you see the wise men come up and they're there and all that. The fact is the wise men came and visited Jesus in a house. Okay, not in a stable if you go back and read the story. So that means they moved in Bethlehem to some other place. Okay, that is all over. They're settled in as this new little family, Jesus and Mary, his mom, and Joseph, and they're living in this house, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. Outside of this are these guys, okay, and they're from a long ways away, and they really have a story to tell that this person, in fact, is the King of the Jews, that even the pagans, even the people who were kind of wisdom worshipers, the people from the East, some people might think it was even India that they came from. Because, you know, in India, there's the community of St. Thomas. Okay? Remember St. Thomas? Stick your hand in it. Otherwise, I'm not believing. That goes back to the 2nd century. So there's Christians in India way before there's Christians other places. They're in the 100s. They're already over there. It's not impossible that these people didn't go back with this amazing thing with them. Okay, it says, okay, now after they left, okay, and Mary and Joseph go back to bed. Whew, who are those guys? They ate up everything. An angel of the Lord appears to Joseph. Once again, this is the 1st century. Rather than tell Mary what's going on, you know, he figures he'll just tell Joseph, and Joseph will share it with his wife. It's kind of nice to have moved on from that, don't you think? Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there till I tell you. Once again, one of the things to notice in this whole thing, including our Hebrews text, is in the scriptures, angels got a lot more work to do, and it's a lot more apparent, and it's a lot more going from Yahweh, from God, to the people than they do here now. One of the things, folks, in 40 years of ministry, if somebody says, I've been visited by an angel, you know what I say? No kidding. Instead of, nah. Because, honestly, they show up all up and down the line, and 90% of the time they look like regular human beings, unless they come to you in a dream. Get up and flee, take the kid and his mother. Remain there till I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and they went to Egypt. Okay, there's two things, if you were in catechism class with me, there's two answers that you need to know. One is 40. Okay, say it.
40.
And the other one is Egypt.
Egypt.
Okay, because if you stop and think, if you ask, how long did anything happen in the scriptures? It's 40. They're in there for 40 years. Jesus is how long in the wilderness?
40 days.
40 days. It shows up. 40 all the time. The other thing is, every time you say, so where did Jesus go? Egypt. Where did the people come out of? Egypt. You know, who was the enemy? Egypt. No, Herod was the enemy. Okay, so they stayed in Egypt till Herod died. Now, Herod, I was reading a thing about a bunch of New York psychiatrists and psychologists and stuff were at a conference, and they sort of psychologically dissected Herod. Okay, kind of put him on the couch in absentia and kind of figured out who he was. They figured out he was a paranoid schizophrenic. I mean, he was an honest to goodness nutter. And because what he would do is he'd get real paranoid and then he'd kill somebody. Lots of times it was people in his family. He killed all of his sons except Archelaus. Okay? He killed the two of his wives. He'd get all flipped out by thinking somebody was after him. And then he would do that. Then he would build things. Because the Holy Land is full of things that Herod built. Okay? There's out in the desert, there's Herod's palace out there that he built into this mountain. He built the church, okay, or the temple in Jerusalem. That was his project, building at that time. Okay, so he'd go crazy, then he'd build things. So anyways, he lived long enough to say to these people, you're done for. It was to fulfill, he went to Egypt to fulfill what has been spoken of by the Lord through the prophet. Out of Egypt I have called my son. What do you suppose that has to do? Do you think back in 500 BC that those people said, you know, there's a kid going to be born in Bethlehem, and this is going to be the prophecy. You think that was it? No. Not when it came to the prophet this time, because the interesting thing about Egypt is that Egypt has got a mixed picture to it. Okay? One is, they're the people that wanted to what? Kill the promised people, the Hebrews. The interesting thing about that is that the reason that's happening is because it says in the scriptures that a Pharaoh came to power who didn't know Joseph. Remember the story of Joseph? Coat of many colors? All those, Joseph and his brothers, who they all were mad because Joseph, dad liked him better. And all the other brothers were mad, so they threw him in a hole. Remember that one? And they soaked his shirt in goat blood, and they took it to Dad and went, ah, no. Dad thought he was dead. And then he said, go back to Egypt. They went to Egypt where there was food. And who did they meet? Joseph. Okay? The descendants of Joseph, they come out of Egypt. The other thing is that the pharaohs of Egypt turned out to be good friends of the Hebrews because they hated the Romans. So, you see, Jesus went to a place where it really was safe. Nothing was going to happen to him. The bad news is it's 3 days walking across the desert to get there. Anyways, when Herod, this goes back to explain what happened. Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise man. He was infuriated. Well, there's kind of upset, and then there's mad, then there's real mad, and what do you suppose the last one is? Furious. He was furious. So he was furious, so you can see him spooling up to be Herod the paranoid schizophrenic, spools it right up, and he says, okay, and he sent, and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or less. Now, is that necessary good news, kids? Absolutely not. I remember sitting in the seats and going, are they coming for me? You know, I remember that because one of the things about kids is you guys believe us when we say things, right? So part of what we do is to ask ourselves, why is this in here? It's really interesting because Bethlehem is still there. Okay, Bethlehem is 3 miles from Jerusalem. 3 miles and through two 26-foot tall walls. Okay, where it takes you 3 hours if you're a Palestinian to get through to go to work, and then 3 hours at the end of the day if they want to let you out. Okay, that's Bethlehem in the here and now. Okay, big lines of cars, all kinds of people standing there in the hot sun, people with guns saying, stand right here, I'm going to shoot you. Okay, it's a really scary place. Bethlehem looks kind of like a regular city, except I saw this Bedouin chieftain riding down the street on this big white horse with the thing going behind him, copy, 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 right through downtown Bethlehem. It's a city now, but you know, in the first century, the big question is, how many kids are we talking about here? Because if any of you folks have ever gone to an art museum and look at pictures of these, you got these big, nasty, mean Roman soldiers that are absolutely cutting up all these little kids with their swords. There was 300 people, they figure, from the censuses and stuff, who lived in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem at this time. We got to understand, this is a very small world these people live in. Okay? So, how many kids under 2 would come from a town of 300 men? Because you didn't count women or kids. 10, maybe 10. Okay, and you know, it's funny because then people go, wow, that's not so bad. That's why, that comes from living in the 20th century. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Because these days, is it a big deal to kill 10 kids? We all say that, right? Until we're trying to get the number 2 guy from Al-Qaeda, and we send a Shrike missile into the wedding reception where he's there with his 22 grandchildren, and we blow the whole bunch of them into little teeny pieces. Okay? Or we decide that we want Aleppo, and we're a Soviet air pilot, and we find out there's some of these guys are hiding in the basement of the preschool, so what do? Bomb the preschool. And remember, we had a guy in his run up to presidency who said, what should we do with those people? What did he say? Bomb the heck out of them. Bomb them. Turn it into a parking lot. How many people have seen somebody up on their hind legs saying, we ought to fix these guys? You know what the problem is? You remember that pogo thing? We have met the enemy and he's us. You cannot split people apart. Why do you think Herod killed these people? Because you couldn't tell which one was Jesus and which one wasn't. Okay? The interesting thing is, there's people that say, well, you know, if he would have known that was Jesus, he wouldn't have done that. And if his grandson known that was Jesus, he wouldn't have crucified him. The interesting thing about that, that's great, except that presumes that there are people who need to be killed. And people who deserve to be crucified. And people who aren't like us, who need to be taken out of the equation because we're scared. That was Herod in a nutshell. Okay, all of them, he says, go kill them. And his guys go there and they kill everybody in the town. All the kids in the town, all 10 of them. They're all lined up. And they got to bury them by the next day. Can you imagine what that day looked like? What these people are thinking in their minds? This was to fulfill what the prophet Jeremiah had told them, and he said, and this is a classic Old Testament text, a voice was heard in Ramah, which is out in the desert, wailing and loud lament, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. What a grim, grim thing. Matthew loves the Old Testament. He uses more Old Testament quotes than any of the other guys. Every time so you come to him, he'll say, and you see, this is what that was about. Boom. You tie those two pieces together. Now, here they are. They're in Egypt. Back in Bethlehem, there's horrible mourning because all the 2-year-olds and under are gone. Herod died. An angel of the Lord comes in a dream to Joseph, and he says, get up, take the child and his mother, go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking a child's life are dead. How many of you folks have outlived your tormentors? It's a certain kind of feeling, isn't it? To be at a job where they do nothing but torture you, and then that guy's gone and you're still there. Okay? To live up through a childhood that you wouldn't wish on anybody, and realize that there'll be a day when your tormentors aren't there anymore. And that is a mercy. Get up, take the kid and his mom. The guys who were looking for him are gone. So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and I could picture him, like the first time, getting him out of bed, putting the kid in his sleeper, with the feet in it, and, putting him on the donkey, and, where are we going, Dad? Well, we're going to Egypt. Now it's like, where are we going, Dad? Well, we're going to Israel. Because, once again, if Christ is the embodiment of the people, that if we become children of God through Jesus Christ, rather than our birth parents and our genetic history, he's got to walk that same path that who walked? The Hebrews. Okay? He, in fact, becomes the people, like the writer to the Hebrews says. What happens to Jesus is everything that happened to them, and what, an unpleasant world would happen to us. Got up, took the kid, went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father, Herod, he was afraid to go there. This is how they did it in those days. Once again, remember, Herod killed all of his kids but one. You think that was the best one or the worst one? That was the craftiest, creepiest, most wicked one who got away from his wicked dad. So here they are. He's afraid to go there. So he was warned in a dream again, and he went to the district of Galilee. Remember our map? We got the Dead Sea's down here. We got the Jordan River. Up there where the cross is where the Sea of Galilee is. Well, about 2.5 feet that way is where Nazareth is. The people who lived there were settled there by the Romans. They weren't Jews. They weren't Hebrews. So Jesus, if you stop and look, has spent most of his childhood among who? People who weren't like him. People who weren't of his race. People who weren't sharing the same sorts of beliefs as he did. And you wonder why he lets the Syrophoenician woman eat the crumbs of salvation from his table. You wonder why, the lepers are okay with him when they come running after him, and he doesn't go, he lets them touch him. He's used to being with people who aren't like him. Are we like that? I would say the one thing we could all say is that not too many of us, pardon me, are real comfortable with strangers. True or false? That's just us. And particularly if we're Lutherans out in the country, we're automatically introverts. We don't like to be around anybody. Okay, you wouldn't move here if you wanted lots of company, would you? This is how we are. So you got Jesus grows up among these people. I'm glad he didn't go back to Bethlehem. You think he'd had a tough sled in his neighborhood? Oh, by the way, we're the ones they were looking for when they killed all your kids. Again, the reason I'm doing this is look at the complexity in the life of Jesus. Because when the writer of Hebrews says he had to suffer what we suffer, otherwise he wouldn't have anything to say when he comes up to this altar. And he wouldn't have anything to say when he offers the sacrifices. How many of you folks think that I walk up here with a nice clean slate? No, Roz can tell you, I've pulled some, as my grandfather used to say, humdingers. Does anybody else use that word besides our family? Boy, that was a humdinger, she'd say. We all have. Not one has skipped over our fear of the other. There's a guy in Bay City who stands on the corner with a sign that says, having hard times. Okay? Anything would help, even a smile. What do you suppose happens to me when I get there?
Smile.
By the time I've got up to that guy, I'm thinking of the 50 reasons why I'm not going to give him any money. I don't believe him. He's a crook. He's not that bad off. Why do we have these people around? Am I proud of this? But how many of us are with me? Okay, on a good day, I'd give him some money. Why? Because I want to help him? I want to feel better. Still, I can't get outside the selfishness. Because that, if we look at our original sin, that is it. Okay, that's the one that gets in the way. Nobody's real except me and mine. Everything else are cardboard cutouts. When Obama says, go ahead, shoot that missile into that wedding feast, what has he decided? Those people aren't real. They're not real. When somebody says bomb out of them, they've decided what about those people? They're not real. Because nobody in their right mind would actually kill that many kids if they thought they were real. So what does Jesus call us to do through this? Okay? He made his home in a town called Nazareth. And Nazareth, to these days, is just this little spot, fly speck on the map. There's nobody there. It's an Arab town. So that what was spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. Okay, that's quite a stretch, because what it really says, he'll be called a Nazarite. You know, Nazarites are people who never cut their hair, who are vegetarians, who are celibate, who absolutely live for God from about the 8th or 9th century back. Okay? Does that sound like Jesus? Had long hair? Was celibate? Maybe. Because we were just talking about the fact that he traveled with women. You're not allowed to travel with women unless you're married to them in the first century. So there's a lot going on here. So was he a Nazarene? Yep. There's the Church of the Nazarene now, isn't there? I got one in my neighborhood who make a big deal out of how he came from Nazareth. I wonder if people understand how he got there. So what do we make of this, people? What's the good news in this? What is it? I think we have to go to the letter from the Hebrews to find the good news. He says, since therefore the children share flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared the same things. I don't know about you, but I was taught to put Jesus way up there and me way down here. And above him was God. But Jesus was up there. He was on the throne already. What this says is there is something about a God who comes down, who makes the whole world holy. Okay, I day, Jesus sitting in my car with me saying, how come you're judging that guy? You know, how come you think he's too fat to be that hungry? How come he's got too good of tennis shoes on to be that broke? That internal judgment thing in me, what's Jesus going to say? He'd say to me what he says to all those other people. When did you see me with too good of tennis shoes sitting outside? When did you see me just get out of jail? When did you see me when I was still in jail? See what we're talking about here. So here we are, got the first day of the year, an awful story. An absolutely awful story. But can we, as the people of God, find a place in there to receive our own forgiveness, our own being let off the hook, and the hope to start again? You know what this is a good day to do? For me to see if I can do anything different at that one corner than what I've done. Okay? Forget about changing your whole life around, you know, becoming a monk or something. I'd settle for just being able to go, here, in the hope that what? My heart will change. So in this way, we follow Jesus into this new year. Him giving us the courage to say, I can even stand up in front of these people and admit the fact that I'm not perfect, because then they know when I kneel down here with them, guess what? We're all on the same bus. And where are we going? To the end of the line. And that's where that fits into this. Amen.
Amen.